Live from the New York Sheraton Hotel, it's the
1983
National
draft
Football
was
League
held April
Collegiate
26
Draft,
to
brought to you by
27,
Budweiser.
1983
For
at the
all you
New York
do,
Sheraton
this
Hotel
Bud's
in
for
New York
you.
City, New York. And actually, no teams elected to claim any players in the supplemental
ESPN's
draft that year.
timekeeper. Timex, we make technology beautiful. And by the Shell Oil Company, supplying quality products and services to meet your driving needs. Come to Shell
This year's
for
draft is
answers.
frequently referred to as the draft with the quarterback class of 1985.
Hi, hello, and welcome back to the New York Sheraton Hotel in New York City for the
6 quarterbacks were
1983
taken in the
National
first
Football
round
League
of this
Collegiate
draft,
Player
an
Draft. You can hear the
unusually high
hustle and
number.
bustle around us. Our entire ESPN draft team is ready to bring you the draft for the 4th consecutive year, and we are just moments away from the start of this 1983 draft. Joining us, as usual, here at the podium in New York City, Paul Zimmerman of Sports Illustrated and Howard Balzer of the Sporting News. Let's get right to it, gentlemen. The big question is the Baltimore Colts and that #1 pick. What is the latest up-to-the-minute scuttlebutt?
I've got my eye on that Baltimore table right now, and he's on the phone, but I don't see him writing anything.
He's getting coffee,
That
probably.
means he's talking to his girlfriend, but nobody's telling him anything.
What do you hear?
Well, the newest entry, of course, is the LA Raiders. They have a package on the table with Chicago, enabling them to get the #6 pick in the draft, enabling them to put together a package to get Elway. I don't see any names mentioned in that package, veteran package, offensive lineman, which is what Chicago wants. I heard rumors that they were willing to give up either Mickey Marvin, their right guard, or Curtis Marsh, their left guard. I don't know whether they would do that because then they cripple their offensive line. I don't know. It seems that New England is also in the hunt, and San Diego, if they have reached agreement with Fouts, now fades to 3rd in the Elway sweepstakes.
Howard, how do you read it up to this minute?
That pretty well wraps it up, really. New England all along has had the best offer on the table, a 1 and a 2 this year and a 1 and a 2 next year. Nobody else, San Diego, really, up until last night, had never actually put an offer on the table to the Colts. It's coming down to the last minute. I'm sure the Colts are talking to people right now as we're speaking. So we'll just have to wait and see in the next couple minutes and see what happens. Denver might even be a late possibility as well.
We'll have more on that first pick in just a couple of moments, but the man who will be starting things off in just a couple of minutes in this 1983 draft is NFL Commissioner Pete Rozelle, and he's standing by with our Sal Marciano. Sal?
Okay, George. Elway may play in the NFL, may not, but for the last couple of weeks, he's been the most spoken about name probably in American sport.
He really has been. I can't think of a recent draft where there's been, well, maybe since Terry Bradshaw. The Bears in Pittsburgh had to flip for the right to the first pick that year, and it was for Terry Bradshaw. But he's really been a big name in this draft.
This is the first time in 18 years you've had a single-session draft. This is going to test all your personnel all over the league today.
The old days, of course, we went nonstop when the AFL was operating before we merged, and it was hours, like 30 hours, I think we went on. Yeah, but this will be the first, as you say, this nonstop. I guess we'll finish sometime after midnight.
Commissioner, we're going in just a couple of minutes. Can you give us a scoop as to what's going to happen?
I don't know. I talked to Baltimore very late last night. I haven't this morning, and I don't know if there's a trade in the wind or whether they're going to take Elway or just what.
We'll see you on the rostrum. Thank you.
Fine, thank you.
Okay, back to George Grant.
Thank you very much, Sal. We'll be going to the commissioner in just a couple of minutes for that first pick. We'll see what Baltimore decides to do. Now, what Baltimore decides to do could very well be related to any number of teams. As Howard and Zim just mentioned, San Diego is one of the teams who may very well wind up with that first pick via a trade. Dave Sullivan is standing by with an update on San Diego's draft prospectus.
It is incredible to think that last year the Chargers sat idle through the first day of the draft. But John Sanders and Don Coryell did so by design, sacrificing all of the club's first 6 picks in a series of transactions that not only obtained some immediate help, but were also aimed at stacking their hand for the 1983 draft. First, there was a decision to make a switch of first-round picks, part of the Fred Dean deal with the 49ers. Then came the second first-round payment from the Packers for Johnny Jefferson, along with a second-round dividend from the 49ers. Finally, last week, Sanders drew a third first-round ace from his pals in San Francisco in exchange for the club's own second-round pick, as well as the #2 choice picked up from the 49ers. Although the Chargers did not take a pick in last year's draft until the 7th round, they still managed to come up with a quality punter in the person of Maury Buford, an 8th-round choice from Texas Tech. Now, while the club has produced just 3 starters in the premium rounds over the last 5 years, the Chargers have added 5 regulars via trade, and 3 of those, Chuck Muncie, Wes Chandler, and Tim Fox, were former #1 choices, and a 4th, Ed White, was a 2nd-round selection. The San Diego Chargers have not made very many mistakes in the premium rounds of the NFL draft. The list is very short. A couple of mistakes back in 1978. However, the Chargers, due to Gene Klein's refusal to renegotiate contracts, did run into trouble and lost Johnny Jefferson and Fred Dean. Jefferson, of course, ended up being traded to Green Bay, and Fred Dean went to San Francisco and appeared in the Super Bowl with the 49ers. The thrust of the San Diego Charger draft strategy here in 1983 will revolve around 2 things. A, the team's ability to come to contractual terms with Dan Fouts, and that will dictate B, whether or not the club is able to make a deal with the Colts to get to John Elway. Should the Chargers fail to make a deal with the Baltimore Colts, General Manager Johnny Sanders will be looking for a pair of quality linemen for both sides of scrimmage. The Chargers are especially long in the tooth on the offensive line, where both Russ Washington and Ed White must be considered as aging veterans. No doubt the defensive coordinator Tom Bass would like to see the club obtain some depth for an injury and error-plagued secondary.
Thank you, David. We should point out one thing, and that is a late developing story, that it may just be rumor, may just be part of a truth factor. We don't really know because no one is saying it, but there has been a report overnight that Fouts has agreed to contract terms with San Diego. No one from San Diego has confirmed that yet, and we'll be trying to check it out as the day progresses. Of course, that first pick does belong to the Baltimore Colts. And Frank Kush, while he has avoided talking about what happens with John Elway, he is very clear on what he thinks his team needs for 1983.
Well, we need a lot of things, and probably some people say you need a coach also. But no, in all sincerity, I thought we made a great deal of progress last year. We need some defensive downmen very badly, at least one. We have a couple of good people in Wisniewski, the young guy from Penn State last year, Donnell Thompson. In addition to that, the offensive line, we need some help at the guard spot, and this is a good year for offensive linemen. We need receivers. We don't have a great deal of deep speed. We missed a lot of balls. We need some catchers also. So, and in the secondary, we need some help. But I would say our primary needs are both in the offense and defensive line.
The head man of the Baltimore Colts, Frank Kush.
48th Annual National Football League selection meeting is now in session. First choice, first round, Baltimore Colts.
Now the Baltimore Colts, they have the first choice in the draft.
Don Weiss has just received the card from the Colts desk. Let's see what the commissioner says.
Baltimore selects as the first choice in the draft, quarterback John Elway of Stanford.
That tells the story right from the top. And Frank
Next
Kush,
up, Los Angeles Rams.
Frank Kush has indicated from the very beginning, when we talked to him at the Senior Bowl, for instance, he said, look, let's put the cards on the table. Yes, we need multiple players. Yes, we need a lot of people to make this club go. But if I don't feel I can get enough of a package, then I will draft John Elway. And that's exactly what he did.
I think somebody panicked in that organization. I think what they intended to do was go right down to the wire to the last second and try and make their best possible trade. And I think somebody said, let's do it now. I don't know why they didn't wait till the very end of the 15-minute period, unless everybody backed out.
One other point is they have the rights to Elway now. San Diego was in the hunt. They picked 4 picks later. The Raiders possibly still could get back into it. We still have a few other picks coming in front. I think the Colts are saying to those other teams, we might take them. And so now they're hoping they'll get back on the phone. There could still be a trade somewhere down the line.
What we're trying to say here is that the story is not over with John Elway. It may be developing all day long because, number one, yes, the rights are owned by the Colts now. Number two is, will they keep those rights? Number three is, can they sign John Elway? For more on this situation and San Diego's pick, let's check in with our headquarters from our ESPN studios and Bob Lee and company. Bob?
Thank you, George. You mentioned 3 factors. Factor 4, John Elway of the Oneonta Yankees, who had $160,000 to play about 40 games last year. Chris Berman, Bud Wilkinson, with yours truly, Bob Lee, will be looking at the players and putting them into their teams as they are selected. Certainly, there's no doubt, Bud, that John Elway is the cream of this draft. Whether we'll have further deals yet to be determined. But is he a franchise player? Is that too great a burden to put on a man who's got a TD interception ratio of 2-to-1, a 65% passer?
I don't think there's anything about Elway that has been overstated. I think he's that kind of a football player. I think he'll be that kind of a professional football player.
Elway has been called, Chris, the best college quarterback to come out of the college ranks since the name of Dick Steinberg has said he's got no flaws. We talked about him on our draft preview show. We'll take a look at his scouting report in just a bit, and the only thing he gets knocked down on is agility, but his arm is as good as we've ever seen.
Well, as we said before, his agility, maybe he doesn't like running up mountains, but remember that private meeting that the Colts weren't talking about between Elway, his father Jack Elway, the college football coach, and also Frank Kush? Obviously, I can't say obviously because there may be a deal, but just perhaps they could have ironed out whatever differences there are, Bob. And I said on the draft preview show I would not be surprised at all to see the Colts keep Elway. I mean, what's wrong with that? It's not like they haven't had good quarterbacks in that franchise's history.
You had a look at the scouting reports we'll be seeing throughout the day on a 5-point system, keep in mind, and we put together a number of scouting reports from throughout the National Football League in a 5-point system. Elway grades out to a 19.5, agility, give him a 4.5. So we put together some of the numbers, but of course numbers certainly don't tell everything about what John Elway is going to do, because he has now, maybe by the end of today, we'll find out if he's going to Baltimore or San Diego. That's an intriguing story, though, about Fouts that George laid on us a few moments ago, Bud.
Well, I think so, and what he decides to do, of course, would have a lot of ripples down the line, but I can't go along about the agility of Elway. I've seen him play too many times, and he's got that quality that has made the difference in recent years in football, which is mobility for a quarterback.
All right, then. Also, we have seen Baltimore, as we've talked about from New York, go right away, Chris. That's got to be a surprise. And Dr. Z said maybe someone pulled the plug too soon.
It's very possible. I think what Howard said also, Bobby, that there could be another trade. In other words, maybe that jacks up the price a little bit more. We already have Elway now. Now you better come up with even a better package. You know, there are worse things that San Diego could do than keep 3 of the first 22 picks overall in the draft and perhaps come to terms with Dan Fouts. Remember, they were going to have to pay Elway about what Fouts was demanding, and that's a situation that they may have had a tough time getting to their fans on if they didn't get to the Super Bowl.
Okay, so if you've just joined us, Baltimore has selected John Elway. They waited nary 45 seconds to make that selection. The clock is ticking on the Rams, who are picking second. Seattle is next up. We continue with our coverage of the 1983 National Football League Collegiate Draft right after this word. Belongs to the LA Rams, the first round, the second pick actually of the overall draft, and you see just a shade over 9 minutes during the first 2 rounds of the draft. Each team will have 15 minutes per selection, and then through the balance of the draft, the last 10 rounds, it'll be 5 minutes per selection. The Rams picking second because they, Chris, decided to trade up and work the deal a couple of days ago with Seattle. Obviously, at least as obvious as you can be before the draft, it looked like they're going to make their move for Eric Dickerson by trading up to the number 2 position because the Oilers had wanted to do so much, and Dickerson seems to be the man they want.
Especially since the Rams traded Wendell Tyler. It would seem that Dickerson is the guy they want. Dickerson said he wants to go to L.A. or San Diego. It is Los Angeles' pick. Maybe they just like to burn off a little time on that clock. They like to see it tick down, think it's add a little excitement here.
Let's get back to New York. The Rams were 2-7 last year, and here is their selection.
Thanks, Bob. The commissioner now has the Rams pick as he approaches the podium.
The Los Angeles Rams, with a choice acquired from Houston in a prior trade agreement, selects on the first round running back Eric Dickerson of SMU. Next up, Seattle.
No. There you see the desk of the Rams. That's Steve Froberg on the left, who signed out the card along with Arnie Sisson and passed it on. The Rams have picked Dickerson, but the big question is, we expected the Colts to take some time. The Colts did it in 30 seconds, and the Rams took their time to do what everybody thought was going to come.
I think George told her to make him dramatic.
I don't know what the explanation is. Maybe some team was talking to them about a trade, and they were thinking about it a little longer. You just never know, but it certainly was a surprise. They took almost 7 minutes to make that selection.
Well, I wish we were in the war room with some of these teams to see who's given up on the Elway sweepstakes and who's intensified their efforts. And I think maybe if you see somebody taking a lot of time when they shouldn't, somebody is bugging them for their pick.
And we should point out, too, the situation surrounding the Rams, in case you missed it late yesterday. The Rams did send Wendell Tyler to San Francisco along with Cody Jones, so that made it very clear that they would go for a running back. Now, Seattle up next, and it's very clear from all the discussions all of us have had with Seattle folks that Kurt Warner seems to be the man that at this point in time, we don't know who they're going to pick, seems to be the man they were looking for.
Well, you know, the Seattle organization has said all along that they wanted Warner ahead of Dickerson. And if John Robinson would have believed them, he could have kept that 3 spot, didn't have to move up, and could have gotten Dickerson anyway. Of course, maybe he doesn't believe him.
Of course, Warner, so much like Joe Cribbs, the running back that Knox had in Buffalo, so you got to feel that's what they're going to do. Maybe they'll take all their 15 minutes now and then pick Kurt Warner, who we all expected anyway.
Okay, we're waiting on Seattle. Already gone. John Elway has been picked by the Baltimore Colts as the top draft. Dickerson has just been selected from SMU by the Los Angeles Rams. We're waiting on Seattle. But how about Dickerson? Let's go back to our studios and get an update on a very fine running back. Bob?
Indeed, a very fine running back. We talked about him during our draft preview program when there's maybe only one great fullback, James Jones out of Florida in this draft, but a whole slew of good people with outside speed, and Dickerson certainly has that outside speed. At an average of 7 yards a carry out of SMU, and you're talking about a guy, maybe the question is, can he run from a split backfield instead of out of the eye? But, of course, his coach with the Rams will be John Robinson.
Well, John has been a follower of the tradition of Southern California, where our tailback's going to get the ball a great deal of the time. He's going to make our football team. You go back to O.J. Simpson, to Davis, to Bell, to all of the great tailbacks, and that's the philosophy that John Robinson has, and pro football's not that much different.
Now, Chris, he has not caught Eric Dickerson a great deal of passes. SMU did not necessarily throw their backs a lot. Maybe that's not a major question for the Rams, but we'll grade him out in just a second. Here's a guy who's averaged nearly 150 yards a game.
Yeah, and the pros these days, as you know, Bobby, a lot of teams are going to go with the one setback. Maybe he has that in mind, perhaps, Robinson, with Eric Dickerson. The fact that he doesn't fumble many pitch outs, maybe they think he has the good hands. They say that when that ball was thrown to him, Bob, that he looked good with it. So it's just not fair to fault him because he didn't play in an offense that had, a pro style.
As a running back, we'll grade him on inside speed, outside speed, his ability to block for fellow running backs and catching. And again, on that 5-point system, we get him a best grade ever for outside speed at 5.0 and an 18.8 out of a possible 20 again. Remember, these are a compendium of different NFL scouting reports. We are waiting now on the Seattle selection. Let's send it back to the Sheridan and George Grant.
Thank you, Bob. We're waiting on the Seattle Seahawks. Their selection will be coming up next. The Seattle contingent of Bob Anderson and Gary Sussick now waiting on the word. There is the card handed to Don Weiss, and it goes to the commissioner for the 3rd pick of this 1983 National Football League draft. Already selected, Baltimore picks Elway. Dickerson selected by the Rams. Here's the commissioner.
The Seattle Seahawks, with a choice of change from the Los Angeles Rams through the Houston Oilers, select on the 1st round running back Kurt Warner, Penn State. Next up, Denver Broncos.
Well, there we have 3 down so far. Elway to Baltimore, Dickerson to Los Angeles, and Warner to Seattle. As we wait, the 4th pick, will it be Hunter to Denver or will there be a trade? ESPN's live and continuous coverage of the 1983 National Football League Collegiate Draft will continue after these messages. Live at the New York Sheraton Hotel. We are waiting on the clock for the Denver Broncos with their 1st round selection. 12 minutes and change remaining. Again, each team is allowed 15 minutes in their 1st and 2nd round selections. After that, for the remainder of the draft, it will be a total of 5 minutes per round, and it'll all be done in one day. Let's check in with Leandra Riley, who's standing by in New Jersey.
Hi, everybody. We're in Lord Jim's in Hawthorne, New Jersey, and I'm sitting next to Tommy Vigorito, running back for the for the Miami Dolphins. We've had 2 running backs already drafted since you've had to make the adjustment from the college ranks to the professional ranks. Your advice to Kurt Warner and Eric Dickerson.
Well, I think one of the biggest things to a running back going from college to pros is not to expect to set the world on fire right away. It's a lot of adjustment emotionally and physically, and you're not really expected to go in and start and gain 2,000 yards your first year. One of the biggest things that they really should start working on now is not only the physical, but the mental aspect of learning your plays. It sounds simple, but it's so hard when you get into the pros with the audibles and all. But it means so much to coaches if you can be able to pick up your plays your first couple of days of practice and all. So if they get their hands on a playbook and start studying, that'd be the best thing for them.
All right, I would like your reaction to the drafting by Baltimore of John Elway. A lot of people were surprised. I thought they'd trade that selection away.
I was surprised too, but I'm happy he went there instead of San Diego, because I think we can beat Baltimore with Elway, but I don't know about if we could beat San Diego with them if they got rid of Fouts. So.
Okay, John Elway, the gauntlet has been tossed by the Miami Dolphins. Let's go back to New York.
Thank you very much, Leandra. We'll be checking in with Leandra periodically during the course of this day to keep up to date with some of the agents and some of the key players of this 1983 National Football League draft who are there. Don't forget, we'll be checking in with the West Coast. Greg Wyatt will be there. We'll check in with him shortly to update you on what's happening with some of those West Coast teams. And also, as we wait for the Denver Broncos decision, let's check in at our ESPN studios with Bob Lee and company. Robert.
Thank you, George. Not too much of a surprise that Kurt Warner went to Seattle, Chris, when you consider some of the economic connections.
Well, people are saying it's a question of to agents. Do we shy away from players? My understanding is that Marvin Demoff represents not only Kurt Warner, the running back from Penn State, but also Chuck Knox, the new Seattle Seahawks coach. So chances are they ought to be able to get together on some terms.
Well, so far we have seen John Elway go to Baltimore. No trade yet. The Rams taking Eric Dickerson second, and Kurt Warner selected by Seattle. Speaking of the number 2 selection in this draft, as Eric Dickerson of SMU has gone to the Rams, Greg Wyatt standing by live at Rams draft headquarters in Los Angeles to talk with head coach John Robinson.
Well, it was a foregone conclusion, really, that you would pick Eric Dickerson. Of course, Wendell Tyler went to San Francisco yesterday.
Well, we feel in Eric Dickerson we have a man who has the potential of being one of the really great backs. He's got every physical attribute that you would want in a back. I've been very impressed also, things besides size and speed. I've been impressed with his ability to run tough inside and his elusiveness. You know, you think of a speed guy being an escapist and just going. Well, I think he can make you miss in tight. I think he's got some of the attributes that I think have made Marcus Allen such a good back. So I see some parallels between them, but I also see some great speed.
When you look at a guy like Dickerson, anybody who can beat Earl Campbell's record in the Southwest Conference has just got to be incredible.
And he's done some phenomenal. He breaks long runs at a phenomenal rate. It seems like about every 4 or 5 minutes when you watch a film, he runs 70 yards for a touchdown. That's not bad, and we're really very excited about it.
This is going to be very interesting in Los Angeles with Marcus Allen of the Raiders and now Eric Dickerson of the Rams. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Greg. And Denver, the time ticking down with 8 minutes and change on the Denver Broncos, the 4th selection overall in the first round of the draft. And Denver, that is a picture of exactly what's happening in New York, and it's Denver's own selection. What is the shopping list for Denver? A lot of stories they might have been dealing number 1 of next year for Elway. That is yet to occur, of course. Dan Reeves, the head coach of Denver, has a rather long shopping list, as you might expect after last season.
We'd like a wide receiver and a tight end as far as our offense is concerned, and wouldn't mind getting an offensive lineman. On defense, I feel like we have to improve our pass rush, and we're looking for a defensive lineman. I'd like to find a cornerback. So there's 5 or 6 positions that we'd like to help ourselves with, and we got the 4th pick of the draft this year, and, you know, I really haven't sat down and started rating them, but if we could get one of those positions in the first round, I feel like it'd help our football team.
So the coach mentioning a number of different positions. Let's backtrack just for a second and look at the selection that Seattle has made, agents aside, of Kurt Warner, who, but statistically, is the top man ever at Penn State, has been called better than Lydell Mitchell, better than Franco Harris, and of course with 4.5 speed, a 5-point average, a lot of pass catching his senior year.
Well, I think it's a tribute also to Kurt Warner's general attitude about football and it being a team game. Going into the season, he probably would have been close to Herschel Walker, the other great running backs, for yardage gain, had Joe Paterno not changed the philosophy of offense. Joe felt in today's football, you must throw the football more. And they changed their basic attack. Instead of trying to wear people down in the fourth quarter, they put the ball up in the air. Warner adapted to it, gave to his teammates, was a great pass receiver, and everybody knew he could run the football already.
And he is, of course, on our scouting report, again, a 5-point system, Chris. Maybe his blocking is the low mark, but his outside speed certainly one of the reasons that Seattle took him third in this draft.
Yeah, as Bud said, Bob, that he did not sulk very long for not carrying the football, and it made him a more polished professional, or about to be professional. And Chuck Knox, as Dr. Z has referred to all along, had said that he thought that in Warner versus Dickerson that the Seahawks would be getting a more polished player, inside, outside, blocking, and also catching. And maybe he's right.
All right, Denver is the team next up, though. The clock continues to march down on the Denver Broncos. There's been talk of them trying to work a trade for a tight end with Dallas, yet to be seen. Now, let's see what's happening right now in New York City.
Thanks, Bob. We're still awaiting 5 minutes, 40 seconds plus on the Denver Broncos and their selection. And, gentlemen, when you talk about Seattle, the last 5 first-round picks they've had have been on defense, but it was really known that they were going to go for some punch, for something in the offense, because they've had so many injuries in that backfield. And the offense, whereas it's getting older, is a good offense with a little bit of help here or there.
You talk about Seattle's picks being defense, but they weren't Chuck Knox's picks.
Right. I think the other key also, though, is Seattle could use some upgrading on their offensive line. With this trade now, where they gave the 2nd and 3rd round pick to Houston to move up, they don't have a 4th round pick. That went to St. Louis in a trade for Theodis Brown a couple of years ago. So Seattle now takes a lot of time off. They don't pick again until the 5th round. So they've still got, it was an interesting deal from that standpoint that they traded up 6 spots and gave up their 2nd and 3rd picks and won't pick now for a while. So they gave up some players that they might have been able to add and help the team, too.
Theodis Brown's a perfect example, too. He looked so good right after that trade in the late season and then just did not look good at all last year.
Maybe Chuck will bring Conrad Dobler out of retirement.
One other interesting point.
Or Tree Rollins,
Paul was talking earlier about the Rams could have probably stayed 3 and gotten Dickerson anyway. But I guess their thinking was, well, we only had to trade a 4th to move up the 1 spot. So perhaps in their thinking it wasn't that high a price just to make sure that they got Dickerson to move up the 1 spot.
A 4th last year and a 4th this year. I mean, all these extra drafts that Don Klosterman had built up, now they're losing him, and I wonder how he feels sitting watching this thing.
Denver. All the speculation has been pointing towards Tony Hunter, the great tight end from the University of Notre Dame, as being their selection. Dan Reeves, as you just heard, indicated a tight end is one of the things on his shopping list, but there are some other things. If it is not Tony Hunter, if they're jogging back and forth now, who would it be otherwise?
I can just see their war room. Joe Collier, their defensive coach, pleading for Billy Ray Smith, saying, please, we've got to have that outside or inside linebacker. And Reeves saying, well, I like Tony Hunter, the offense and defense having a war out there.
And there's also thinking that Chris Hinton of Northwestern could be the choice, because there's the possibility that Claudie Minor might retire for the 2nd time like he almost did last year. But so there's 3 solid choices that you could make a good case for Denver making, or they might, again, like we talked earlier, might even be working out a trade possibly with Baltimore to get John Elway. So this really holds the key to the rest of the draft right now, what Denver does.
The 1982 draft was recognized as an offensive draft. This draft also as an offensive draft, a very strong draft, even before the USFL depleted some 10% or so of the players that might be selected in the first few rounds, and that's the way it's panned out so far. Offensive players.
I think you won't find a defensive player drafted until Billy Ray Smith, and then it might be only 2 in the first 10 or 11. The next one will be Terry Kennard. So you might go 8 or 9 offensive drafts with only 2 defensive.
Possibility of a quarterback for the Denver Broncos. Is that a real possibility at this juncture?
Except for Elway, I don't think that they have the other quarterbacks like Eason or Todd Blackledge. Jim Kelly, of course, is in there too, and Dan Marino. But I don't think they have any of those quarterbacks rated that high to use a fourth pick on. But you just never know.
That would mean that Reeves was giving up on Mark Herman awful quick, and that was his choice. That wouldn't look too good.
Billy Ray Smith is an individual who we've talked about here and who may very well be the first defensive player selected. We talked to Billy Ray and asked him if he had any feelings about where he would want to play.
I'd like to play for Dallas, but like I said before, any team that would invest in the confidence in me to draft me, I'd play my heart out for him.
Let's say he might be a little bit too slow, might be a little bit too small, but all he does is do everything perfectly, and he's a winner.
Denver's now writing their pick. Remember, there was also a lot of talk about Dallas wanting Billy Ray Smith and offering a lot of players to Denver. Butch Johnson was mentioned. Jay Saldi was mentioned. Glenn Carano was mentioned. Of course, Reeves was once an assistant with Dallas. So we're going to find out momentarily what happens, but there are a lot of possibilities.
Dan Reeves is on the last year of his contract, too, and he's got to produce.
Don Weiss has the card. The commissioner, Bill Harpole, and Mike Novica have handed the selection of the Denver Broncos to Commissioner Rozelle.
The Denver Broncos select on the 4th choice in the 1st round, guard Chris Hinton of Northwestern. Next up, San Diego.
We now wait on the San Diego Chargers. Chris Hinton, who was a tackle but is projected as a great pulling guard in the professional ranks, the selectee of the Denver Broncos. We're waiting on San Diego. ESPN's live and continuous coverage of the 1983 National Football League Collegiate Draft will continue after these messages. Updating you on the 1983 National Football League Collegiate Draft, the San Diego Chargers have just selected Billy Ray Smith, the linebacker from Arkansas. So the Chargers go for some defense, and it looks like Bass wins the battle of the first pick for San Diego.
Yeah, it looks like also Chicago's coming up, and we were just talking, maybe they've changed their thinking now and they want Tony Hunter. I would say it's Hunter, Jimbo Covert, or Bruce Matthews.
I had predicted Matthews. I think Hunter now becomes a real key in the draft. Could something happen almost like Kellen Winslow last year, where everyone had him, or not last year, a few years ago, when everyone had him going on the 3rd pick to Cincinnati. The Bengals took Jack Thompson, and Winslow sailed through to almost the middle of the 1st round. So there's a thought the Giants might take Hunter. So it's really going to be interesting to see where Hunter does wind up.
Billy Ray Smith selected by the San Diego Chargers. Let's go to Greg Wyatt and get an update on what's transpiring on the West Coast as we continue our coverage of the 1983 National Football League Collegiate Draft.
George, is very interesting. The John Elway Bowl has turned into a George Steinbrenner Bowl. And believe it or not, just a few picks into the National Football League draft, George Steinbrenner has made his mark in the National Football League because Marvin Demoff, the agent for Elway, has just told me via the telephone that John Elway has chosen baseball since the Baltimore Colts picked him. So John Elway will make the announcement at 2 p.m. our time, which is 5 o'clock Eastern time, at the Hyatt in San Jose, California, which is right near his home. So John Elway has chosen the Yankees over the National Football League, and that is it from here in Los Angeles.
I don't believe that.
Well, we'll see what happens. That report from Greg Wyatt. Billy Ray Smith just selected by San Diego. Initial reaction?
Good pick by San Diego. I thought, Bob, that there are many worse things they could do than to have the 5th, 20th, and 22nd pick overall. Billy Ray Smith, their first pick, I think, in numbers 20 and 22. One of them, if they're lucky enough, Gary Anderson, the scat-back Bruce Harper-type receiver from Arkansas, if he's left. And the other one, probably the 2nd-rated cornerback, Leonard Smith, a guy who I've been told is the best man-to-man covering cornerback in the draft, although Tim Lewis of Pitt is expected to go earlier. So I think San Diego keeping Fouts, going with Billy Ray Smith and a cornerback, and maybe something to jazz up the offense. I think it's a good move. They're so close to the Super Bowl that I don't think that they should wait anymore.
Next up is Chicago. Now, we've heard some talk that maybe the Bears would be courted by the L.A. Raiders, Bud, possibly because the Raiders might want to make a move up, because right now they're selecting rather deep in the 1st round. If they could select next, they'd be the 6th team, and maybe they had at one point been thought to be in the John Elway Bowl, as it's been called. Maybe this is the time for them to make a move.
A tight end is always an invaluable commodity. I don't think we should just gloss over Hinton's choice. That second one of Billy Ray Smith came so rapidly. Hinton's a boy who was a tight end. He has been a linebacker. He's 264. He can run. And Denver's got, I think, a all-pro almost for sure, who's got 12 or 15 years ahead of him. And that's a priceless commodity to have on your football team.
Okay, we are waiting on the Bears right now. They will be selecting next number 6 in the 1st round. Then comes Kansas City, to be followed by Philadelphia. And Houston will be making the number 9 selection by virtue of that trade recently with Seattle. And Seattle, with the pick for which they traded up, selected Kurt Warner. We do have on the phone, I understand he's not on the phone currently, but let's talk about Chris Hinton, who has been the selection of Denver today. And here's a young man who did not play the offensive line until his last year. He played tight end, he played linebacker, but his coach had to lobby to get him listed on some All-American ballots beginning of the season. 4-7 across the board in our scouting report. We'll get a good look at what he can do in the line.
The speed and mobility that he possesses are the unusual qualities for someone with his size and strength.
What about the switch in positions, having only one full year at that position, playing tackle in college after only 1 year, now being projected as a pro guard? This is a young man who's going to be all over the board.
If you're an athlete and a football player, it just doesn't make much difference.
Hinton selected by Denver, the number 4 overall selection. It's a very good year for offensive linemen, and Chris Hinton, obviously, in the selection, the eyes of the people that have picked so far, is the best man available. We're waiting for Chicago to be followed by Kansas City. John Elway has been selected by Baltimore. We have not had a trade yet in this draft. Let's get back to the Sheraton in New York.
Thanks, Bob. Let's take another step further in the Elway situation. I think we're seeing more of a chess match than any kind of a definitive statement made by anybody.
Squeeze play. It's a Demoff and Al Davis squeeze play on Baltimore. Now they think, Demoff came in with the announcement quickly. Maybe they can panic him into making a trade that they don't want to make. And I see the hand of Al Davis behind this, Al being very good friends with Marvin Demoff. He just came up with that baseball announcement too quickly, and I think they want to stampede Baltimore into a quick trade.
I have to agree. Either the Raiders are going to try to trade up with Chicago and get the pick now that Chicago is supposed to be taking, or San Diego remains in the picture. They still have 2 number 1 picks left, perhaps New England. It wouldn't be surprising to see the Colts, with the squeeze being put on them, then turn around and trade Elway's rights to someone else and let them worry about it, but someone else other than the Raiders. So there's still a lot of intrigue left in this whole situation.
They're trying to get the price down. Baltimore's, obviously, unless they read it as a lie, they've got to trade him or eat the pick. And then there'll be a few jobs on the line in that one.
And in any case, the way the situation stands at this particular hour, John Elway has been selected by the Baltimore Colts. In case you joined us late, the late report we have from the West Coast is that Elway has selected baseball over football. But again, as we're discussing now, this may not be the end of the story. Before this day is over, we may very well find out exactly what direction John Elway will be going in. We should point out the fact that it's been no secret from the beginning that the dollar figures have been more advantageous for Elway from a baseball perspective, as opposed to his possible football contract. But there are a lot of other intangibles that will go into the Elway decision, so we'll be keeping up on that during the course of this entire NFL draft. Let's go back to Sal Marciano now, who has more reaction on this day number 1 of a one-day draft this year in the NFL. Sal.
George, the reaction here at the Baltimore Colts table is short and sweet. No comment from Dave Filer and John Scott, the representative of the Colts here in New York. I spoke with Commissioner Pete Rozelle, and the NFL commissioner said he will reserve comment until after John Elway's news conference this afternoon. Now back to George.
Okay, thank you, Sal. And standing by at our ESPN studios, Bob Lee and company are prepared to keep us up to date on what else is transpiring as we look at some of the athletes who have gone already. For instance, Billy Ray Smith. And before we go, we got Chicago now just working on their table. Let's stay with it for just a couple of moments and see what transpires, because they are ready to take their pick. The Bears with their first of 2 picks. Don Weiss has the card. He'll go up to the commissioner and get the first pick of 2. The second would be from Tampa Bay later in this first round. The Bears with 2 number 1 picks in the first round. Here's the commissioner.
Trade. That's a trade card. I can see by the expression on his face.
Chicago Bears. Bears pick on the first round. Jimbo Covert, tackle, Pittsburgh. Next up, Kansas City.
Okay, 2 tackles, 2 big tackles have gone so far in this first round. Hitting from Northwestern, Jimbo Covert, one of the strongest offensive tackles ever to play the college game from the University of Pittsburgh. Now goes to the Chicago Bears. We'll be back with more of ESPN's live and continuous coverage of the draft after these messages.
Along with Chris Berman and Bud Wilkinson, Bob Lee, as we continue our live coverage for the 4th consecutive year of the National Football League Collegiate Selection. We have live on the telephone Chris Hinton out of Northwestern, who has been the number 4 selection today of Denver, number 4 overall in the first round of Denver. Congratulations, Chris. Were you expecting to go to Denver? Do you think possibly the Bears might take you closer to home than Northwestern?
Lately, just like the past week or so, I was starting to hear Denver, but up until then, I thought Chicago all the way. And I think Denver took all of their 15 minutes to make their choice. So I kind of thought they might pick someone else.
Chris, you've really struck a great blow for the future of Northwestern football. A lot of people said, why go to Northwestern when you'll never get any recognition? And I'd like to congratulate you. What's your feeling about that?
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Chris, you've played tight end, you've played linebacker, you played tackle your senior year. You were announced at the draft as a guard. Where would you prefer to play? Which position, tackle or guard in the pros, or does it really matter at this point?
I have no preferences. I want to play professional football.
Okay, and you're certainly going to do that because you're the top offensive lineman selected in a very deep year for offensive linemen. Congratulations, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Chris Hinton live on the telephone out of Northwestern at 6'4", 245, and Billy Ray Smith was selected just after Chris by San Diego, projected as a linebacker out of Arkansas. And Billy Ray Smith, and we talked about, and Paul and Howard talked about the battle that must have been going on in San Diego. Tom Bass, defensive coordinator, winning out a scouting report that shows him grading out to a 19-0 on a 5-point system. His coverage takes a bit of a licking here, but of course strength, quickness, and pursuit are good numbers for Billy Ray Smith.
And rushing the passer is a vital thing. I don't think anybody ever questioned the ability of San Diego to move the football. It's just been phenomenal. The skill of their offense. If they can build a defense that can stand in there and get the ball relatively quickly, then they're real Super Bowl contenders.
He was a roving end for Arkansas, kind of a disruptive force on the field, so Billy Ray Smith, the selection. Kansas City is up. Let's get back to the Sheridan in New York City for their pick.
Here's the commissioner.
Kansas City, first choice in the first round. Quarterback, Todd Blackledge, Penn State. Next up, Philadelphia.
Philadelphia Eagles will be up next, and now very clearly this settles the question: will it be Fuller or will it be Kenny or will it be a trade for Carano? It will be neither of those three. And I think also too you have to consider the fact most of the scouts realize that Blackledge may take a year or two before he gets to the point of being ready to step in, because he doesn't come from a pure professional style backfield with the Nittany Lions. But does this surprise you?
Well, it surprised me because they said Eason. I should have known that they were blowing smoke. They said Eason, and then they said that Kelly